even a long life in good health doesn't mean much if you don't love your life. What we have found is that genetics only predict between 14 and 25% of our longevity experience. So the biggest part is not genetic, but it's not great big things, it's little tiny things. So going for a walk, choosing, the unprocessed food over the processed food. This does make a difference, and it seems little. And sometimes people go, "Oh, if I can't do this great big thing, I won't do anything." It's like, no, do the little thing. I call it the club sandwich generation. So even if you don't think your other family members can do as good a job, or you don't love the way they do it, still bring them in. Ageism tells you that people won't want what you have to give, and it simply isn't true. But what is not publicized is all the research on what gets better as you get older. And what their really rigorous research found is that those who endorsed positive aging beliefs lived 7.5 years longer. And more than that, the quality of their lives improved. So the four biggies are grow, connect, adapt, and give. And those non negotiables will put you on the trajectory to longevity you're looking for, in the same way that cardio, flexibility, agility, and strength will fortify you externally.
Dr. Kerry, I'd love to just hear what your morning or day has looked like so far, just to set the stage a little bit.
It was not a usual day, but it had ups and downs. So we're journeying with my family, who my father-in-law passed away the day before yesterday. And so it's been a lot of on the phone and connecting, and we've been going back and forth to my mother-in-law's house. So that is a blessing, and also rough, and also part of the human existence that we all have. And then today I had a call with some researchers in the UK and also in Tel Aviv, Israel. And so we were talking about our efforts in longevity internationally. And so that was unusual and fun too.
That's exciting. So, Dr. Kerry, thank you so much for joining us today at Movement Living. We're really looking forward to talking to you and introducing you to our community. But just before we jump into our conversation, for anyone that doesn't already know you, can you just tell us who you are and what you do?
I am a gerontologist. And so for the past 30 years, what I think about is growing older. And it's something that every one of us is doing. And we start the minute that we're born. And so for 20 years, I taught in geriatric medicine and gerontology. And I really focused on areas of elder abuse and neglect and exploitation and dementia. And it was the very rough side of growing older. And what I realized is that so much of the suffering could be avoided if we made changes earlier in our lives. So, this second part of my career is trying to delve into the research on why some people thrive in longevity and some people not so much.
Wow. I mean, we are all about that at Movement Living. Live well, age better. And I love that your mission is so aligned. You hinted at it a little bit, but was there a particular like aha moment when that shift happened in your career, in your life?
My work partner and I, Dr. Mosqueda, had received an award from the U.S. Attorney General, who at that time was Eric Holder, and it we got to go to the White House, and they talked about us serving the victims of elder abuse and neglect. And on the flight home, rather than feeling happy about it, I had this realization that it's not enough to serve people after they have endured suffering. And so I had this picture in my mind that it was like a skateboard ramp. And I was down at the bottom edge of the skateboard ramp, putting Band-Aids on people and getting all these awards for it, when the real work is up at the top of the skateboard ramp. And we know the predictors. We know that isolation and loneliness. We know that we need to fortify ourselves physically, absolutely, but also internally. And it was on that flight that I thought, I need to get to the top of the skateboard ramp. And it's really made all the difference.
That's such a great metaphor.
I love that. Well, fortify internally. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Because it isn't that, successful aging is not that you don't encounter challenges. That's silly. I mean, we are going to have challenges, and we often lose loved ones, as I just had, and our spouses, and we have conditions despite our best effort. We're definitely on a trajectory that ultimately every one of us is going to pass away. And before we do, we will be walking with challenges. But how we walk with those challenges, how we experience our added longevity is really in our court.
My husband and I, we talk about the big D. You know, the big D is the diagnosis, what's going to come down the pike. You are looking at this downward trajectory and trying to fortify yourself internally and externally. So, I mean, it's perfect. And we need all the tools we can get to do that.
And there's very rigorous research. I mean, there are really proven ways that we can do that. It's just that until now, it's been predominantly in the academic literature and not in everyday language. So part of what you're doing is spreading, like, here's the information on what you need to do. And it's so practical. And a big part of the problem is that we have publicized what gets worse as you get older. So there's this multi-billion-dollar anti-aging industry telling you all these things because fear sells. And so of course they want it to look like it. But what is not publicized is all the research on what gets better as you get older. So as we get older, we have improved problem solving. And I have a great example of that. We have greater appreciation of our connections, our spirituality, our humility, our humor. And if people knew that, they would approach aging in a very different way instead of the it's all downhill message.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're all about. And you just hit the nail on the head with, there's all of this research it's like stored up in the scientific community, and we need to get the awareness out. And I'd love to hear from you, like, what are some of the big things that are, like, I don't know, low hanging fruit, or like those things that it's like, hey, if you just did these things, like, you're going to see a tangible improvement or shift, or I'd love to know what those things are for you.
I love that question. So this is how I think about it. There is lifespan, how long you live. There is health span, how long you live a healthy life. And we want both of those. We want to maximize both of those. But then you get to a point of, well, a long life, even a long life in good health, doesn't mean much if you don't love your life. And so I think a piece of the conversation that has been missing is what I call Joyspan. And that has to do not with joy like ecstasy, but joy as contentment. It is well-being, psychological and emotional well-being. There is lifespan, how long you live. There is health span, how long you live a healthy life. And we want both of those. We want to maximize both of those. But then you get to a point of, well, a long life, even a long life in good health, doesn't mean much if you don't love your life. That will change the trajectory of your lifespan, health span, and joy span, is changing how you think about aging. So there is a study by my colleague at Yale, Becca Levy, and she held all the variables constant that you would expect would impact how you age. And the variable was your beliefs about growing older. And what their really rigorous research found is that those who endorsed positive aging beliefs lived 7.5 years longer. And more than that, the quality of their lives improved. So, we know that manifesting makes a difference. Like how you expect to show up in the world completely impacts how you experience the world. And then it's like that on steroids when it comes to aging. So to have positive role models of people you think, oh, I'd like to age like that person. And to look in the mirror and see yourself as the incredible growing person that you are makes such a big difference, as opposed to looking in the mirror and falling for the untrue lie that you're now less than because you are older. It's the opposite, right? And so that one shift of really examining your ageist beliefs, and I have a quiz that I use to ask people about what their aging beliefs are. And so much of it is unconscious. So we don't realize that we're holding these things. And then once you put attend to it, you'll hear people, oh, I'm having a senior moment. Oh, I look so old. I can't remember this. We're playing into it and it's hurting us. This internalized ageism is, to me, the step one in the journey.
I know for myself, I have a lot of that language, and I'm catching glimpses of that joy, and whether it's the grandchildren or watching your mother on Instagram, who is amazing at 96 with her attitude, and also watching older women who are fit and are lifting weights and being very positive. All of those things are adding to my ability to change that language. Is there anything else that you can think of that helps do that?
Yes. So that was one about changing how we think about aging. So you're shifting from a decline aging mindset to a continued growth aging mindset, where you really see, and I watch people's body language change as they step into that. You go from like, oh, to like, yes, I am older. When people say, oh, you don't look 85, you say, this is what 85 looks like, right? Like really stepping into it. But all the research, there are thousands of studies about what improves your aging and longevity experience. And at first it's overwhelming because there's so many different components. But happily, after digging into it for many years, I found that they group into 4 areas. So there are 4 parts of the Joyspan matrix. And the number 1 is grow. So, and I made them verbs because it takes action. So you've got to continue to grow and think, what is my next goal? How am I going to step out and do something uncomfortable or new, or, just like for me, writing a book, I was like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And it was so, and you guys are doing it right now about building this society of humans who are coming together. So number 1 is grow. Number 2 is connect. So connection, and we can't put it on autopilot. So if you live, as you probably will, to a ripe old age, like my mom at 96, you outlive existing friendships, and people move away, or people have cognitive impairment or other conditions. So we've got to diversify our social portfolio. So you need to really be the one to pick up the phone and to be the one who shows up for others, and to knock on your neighbor's door and to get to know the person at Starbucks, because connection is like cardio. It's one of the components that's going to make you. And with the elder abuse world, we had people who were targeted, or those who are disconnected. So we could tell you're not going to have a great aging if you aren't connected. So that's number 2. Number 3 is you have to adapt. And if you don't adapt, you will likely not have joy and longevity, because things change and they're supposed to change. So my patients who lament the inability to continue to play pickleball and focus on that versus wow, my knees are not allowing my pickleball anymore. I'm going to see about the possibility of something else like swimming. Or, wow, I lost my best friend to cancer. You can live there for the rest of your life, and it's a choice. Or you can say, I really miss this friend, and I am going to make the choice to honor her by creating other friendships and picking up the phone and calling people. So we have to adapt, because the one thing we know for sure in longevity is that there's going to be change. And then the fourth part of the Joyspan matrix is giving. We've got to continue to find a way to give, and their ways are little, not big. So bringing lemons to your next door neighbor, or sitting down and taking time with a grandchild or child. And what gets in the way of giving is internalized ageism tells you that people won't want what you have to give. And it simply isn't true. So I have a patient right now who is nonverbal and quite contracted, but the gift that she gives is her listening. And we can't wait to be with her, because her eyes, when we're talking to her, it's incredible. And so I thought, wow, even if I can't speak at some point, I can still listen, and what a gift I can give. So the four biggies are grow, connect, adapt, and give. And those non-negotiables will put you on the trajectory to longevity you're looking for, in the same way that cardio, flexibility, agility, and strength will fortify you externally.
Wow, that's so symmetrical. I love it. And I've signed up and pre-ordered your book, Joyspan, which is what this is all about. And I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about that, the book, the
Oh,
process, and that it's coming out and how you get it.
I'm grateful for that. Yes. So Joyspan is 30 years in the making, and has been a real, I was going to say a joy, but that sounds really corny. it was, uh, it was hard, and took many years, but it really feels good. They gave me an early copy, and so I have it here where I look at it. And basically what it is, it's really practical. It is a practical, science-based, proven approach that I implemented with my mom decades ago, that put her on a path that has been terrific. And so my dear mom, has been a guinea pig for this, and her friends as well. So I know it works. And I have learned, it comes out in August, but what I've learned recently is that the pre-order is how they determine how many to print, and also the ranking of the book, like how it makes it on lists. So I really have learned that if people would be willing to pre-order it, I would be so grateful. And it can be from your local bookstore, or from Barnes and Noble, or from, of course, Amazon or Target or Walmart. So basically anywhere that they sell books is where you can get it. And if you would be so kind as to pre-order it, it's apparently a lot better than waiting until it comes out. So I didn't know that until recently.
Well, we definitely are planning to do that, and hopefully we can all together make it a bestseller, because it just sounds like life-changing, truly, for aging and longevity. And I love how well the work that you're doing just fits in with one. So at Movement Living, we have our 3 pillars of wellness, which is movement, which is more of that physical that you were talking about. And then there's food and nutrition and what you're putting into your body. But then connection is like the third pillar. And I think it's often forgotten about when it comes to longevity. Like, people are really focused on, healthy eating and moving your body and exercise. Like, everyone kind of knows those things, but it's the connection piece that is so important. And I love that that is like your entire focus, because it's so important. And I think it's like, we just have to keep hammering that message. Like, this is so important. Connection is so important.
And the connection is both with other people and
Yes,
with ourselves.
exactly.
So there is incredible research on the epigenetics of purpose. Purpose meaning that you have something to give and a reason to get out of bed each day. And so this research out of UCLA by Stephen Cole, he looked at people and said, to what extent do you feel like you have purpose in your life? And what he found is that it impacted their inflammation, which is what releases disease, and also antiviral load. So there's a physiological benefit of connecting with other humans, and then also having this internal life of your own in terms of how you're giving, how you're adapting, your spirituality, your time in nature. So I like what you're doing so much, because those three pillars and then the connect kind of encompasses all of the components that I was hitting on with Joyspan. So I'm grateful for the work that you are doing, because you're demonstrating it and you're bringing people together to really do it, because you can't just know it, you actually have to do it.
And I just had one question, because I thought that point about that study was so powerful. And I think epigenetics is like the coolest thing. And it's almost not intuitive. So I just want to jump back to that. And could you just explain for anyone that doesn't know, what is epigenetics? Like, isn't it just you're born with your genes and that's your lot in life, and you can't do anything about it? Like, talk to that a little bit.
It's such a good question. So in the research, what we have found is that genetics only predict between 14 and 25% of our longevity experience. So the biggest part is not genetic. And then when you dig into genetics, you're born with a certain genetic profile. But epigenetics is looking how genes are expressed. So you can, for example, have the breast cancer gene, but never get breast cancer because that gene isn't expressed. So the ways that genes are expressed, one is inflammation is really a systemic factor of how genes are or are not expressed. And similarly, like antiviral load. So in the loneliness literature, we find that people who are chronically lonely have a mortality risk that is the same as smoking 14 cigarettes a day, because of the inflammation, because of the antiviral. So I'm not an epigeneticist, but I'm very interested in their work. And when my colleague at UCLA found that purpose impacted gene expression, he was even surprised, because he did a lot of different predictors. And when purpose came out so powerfully, it was then in all these, not only academic journals, but then also in newspapers. And that's when I first came across it. It was in a newspaper about talking about how powerful this was. And so, of course, I went right to the academic study and studied it. And then I follow, his name is Steve Cole, and I'm very interested in that work.
We keep saying the same thing and we keep knowing the same thing, but it really helps when the science backs it up. And it also helps to keep saying it. And we're always saying to ourselves, oh, we can't keep stating the obvious, but it's not obvious necessarily. And you get more and more into it as you learn the science. It's the same with muscles, your skeleton. I love anatomy. It's the same thing. And so that's an exciting field. Very interesting.
It really is. And then when you see it in action, like you see it in practice. So my mom, who is now 96, and she doesn't, she's not unusual. And so people will say, like, I want to be like her. And I think you can. You really can, but it's not just from wishing, it's by really putting in the effort. And so just what you're saying, which is moving, and the food that you eat, and the choices that you make every day to reach out and connect and give and serve and adapt and all these kinds of things is but it's not great big things, it's little tiny things. So going for a walk, choosing, the unprocessed food over the processed food, picking up the phone and, creating a connection that you maybe didn't have before. And it's not that it's easy, and that's why we need to work on it. It's because it's hard. We need to get in there and do the work.
Yeah, plus you don't even know if what you're doing is actually helping, because it's one of those things that if you don't do it, you're going to go that way, but you don't know what you did. Although I'm finding that the more mobility, even just moving my joints and things, not even cardio, that I do, the more that I do, the better I feel, or not the better, but the less I feel badly. And so it's that having the faith, I guess, in that what we're
Yes.
doing is really helpful. And the science.
Absolutely. And knowing that this does make a difference. And it seems little. And sometimes people go, oh, if I can't do this great big thing, I won't do anything. It's like, no, do the little thing. And you're an radiant example.
That point about it's the small things, and they're so small, it seems like they're not even going to make a difference, but that's where all the difference is. Because if you are just in this mindset of like, unless I'm training for a marathon, it's not worth it. But it's like, no, just take the stairs, go around the block.
That's absolutely right. Right. In my mom's case, she had recently stopped driving. And so when you don't drive and okay, then how am I going to get my groceries? So then she needed to adapt, and her adaptation is like by trying different things. And so one of them was trying Instacart. And when you first do something, it's not easy or comfortable, and then you just stick with it because, to your point of believing that it makes a difference, like it matters that I am trying a different approach. And if this doesn't work, I'll try that. And if that doesn't work, I'll try that. Like all those little things that you do throughout your day, that is your longevity experience.
Dr. Kerry, I'd love to talk a little bit about, I know a lot of women in our community are part of that sandwich generation, and they're, caring for their adult children, caring for their aging parents. And I'd love to just hear from you, your perspective on that, and any tips or advice that you have for navigating, your own life, big transitions and all of these things, just while you are so involved in caring.
I call it the club sandwich generation because it is a three for one. So we often are caring for our aging parents, and then often we have children or adult children, and then we also have a health thing. So, on any given day, you have a triple whammy. So I'll give my example is that our 25-year-old daughter has a brain tumor. So we're walking with that. And then my, 96-year-old mother has congestive heart failure. So we're walking with that. And then, for example, yesterday I had 25 stitches for my skin cancer. And it's not unusual, and it's not wrong, and it's not like, oh, why me? No, it's because you're human. That's why you have stuff, because humans have stuff. And how we walk with the stuff, how we think about providing the care, makes a difference. What I will caution all the humans out there is that we also can't do it all. So we think that, oh, if my mom needs this, I'm the one who needs to do everything, and then my daughter needs all this, and it has resulted in, understandably, a burned out uh, group of people who feel, frankly, trapped by all their care responsibilities. And I just would kiss the feet of caregivers about all the loving and kind work they do. And with that, I applaud you, and I also urge you to recruit the help of others. So even if you don't think your other family members can do as good a job, or you don't love the way they do it, still bring them in. And if there are resources, still think about things that you can, pay people to come in and do help. So I have a friend whose mom lives with Alzheimer's disease, and she loves her mom so much and she wants to do everything herself. And I have to keep reminding her that she simply can't, and that it is not in any way bad or less than to, let family members, and if you can, people that you can hire, help with the care, help on all the levels. And sometimes we have to get really creative because there just are not financial resources to do it. And so you think, if I don't do it, it just won't get done. And that's where thinking, okay, are there neighbors? Are there relatives? Are there different ways that we can make this work so that it's not that we can take off our superhero capes? Because this club sandwich generation, we can easily not be good for any of us if we're trying to do all of it.
Yeah, and that's excellent. And there are also volunteer organizations where people do volunteer. So I am dealing with that with a brother in Florida who needs a lot of care, and it's so hard because he's so far away. So I'm exploring all those things, and even my other brother who's not great at this, I'm asking him to please.
Yes.
Make-
And being very specific how you ask, like, would you, and then say, just write what it is.
Yeah.
And because any little thing is helpful. And I also have so many people who say, like, oh, my little brother, like they'll say, like, my brother is worthless, he won't help at all. And then I say, did you give this particular job? Well, no. Try it, try it, because perfection is really the enemy because it's not going to be perfect. And sometimes I even don't use the word like aging with grace, because a lot of times it's not grace. Like it's not graceful in any way. We're just trying to, make it through the day and keep things together. But by asking others to help, even if they don't do it the way that you do, like, good for you for recruiting
Well,
everyone
hey,
you can.
that is a long lesson, long learned, because I have that tendency. I also want to make everyone happy. So this morning I asked my brother, I said, could you find out, because my other one went into the hospital yesterday. I said, can you find out how he is? I don't have time. I've got this interview and I will do it later if you can't do it. And
Yes.
he actually responded, okay, so that takes a long.
That's a huge win. That is so great. And then you build on that and you think, okay, what's another thing? What's another thing? Another thing. And then people sometimes, even though they do it differently, you think, well, that worked out. I can learn from you doing things differently.
Yeah, and he wants to help. He sees what I do, and it's just he doesn't know how because he's just not like me.
You said something that I think is really important, which is that he doesn't know how to help. Like, he actually does want to help, but he doesn't know how. And I think that as women, often, who hold everything together and just have this amazing sense of knowing what needs to be done or knowing how to help, and I see this with you, Mom, Gab, is like, you can't ask for help because when you do ask for help, you almost expect people to know how to help. But if you just say and said, hey, can you do X? Like exactly what Dr. Kerry was saying. It's like, don't just say, hey, can you help? Say, hey, can you go do X? Can you call the hospital? Can you take him a new tablet? Can you get him pajamas? Like, it's those specific things, because to you see 100 things that could be done and you're like, he can't even do one thing, but it's like he actually just doesn't even see what you see. So there you go.
Yeah. Thank you. Constructive feedback. It doesn't always work out, but I take it. And this is the beauty of, having communication with your children or your
Yeah.
parents. And I'd love your opinion or your insights, because you talk about going in hot. I want to talk about how you deal with your parents or how your kids deal with you and what they see you're not doing right or what you see your parents aren't, because I think that's very important. I've been guilty of doing that. Amanda's been guilty of doing it to me. So let's talk a little bit about that.
I love that. Thank you. We all do that. So because we've been fed a diet of like older is in some ways less than, the impact is that a lot of times younger people think that they can do it better or are seeing things more clearly than older people. And from that belief, it makes you go, oh, you know what? Here's what you need to do. Let me do that. I can help, whatever. And then understandably, like I'm gonna put the example of I on my phone, I'm trying to do something. And then one of my adult children will take the phone out of my hand while I'm doing it in order to show me that how to do it, or they can do it faster or something, like to try to help me. That feeling that I have gives me a taste of why that is not the way to go. Because it makes me go, hi, I was doing it. Just give me a second. I'm doing it my way. So when I then go to do the same thing to my mother of like, oh, you know what you need to do here? Let me, it, it's not the right thing to do. And I call it coming in hot, where you're going to come and you're going to solve the older person's, and we can convince ourselves that it's like out of like love and kindness that we're just helping. Like, I'm just trying to help. And then people will call me and they go, Dr. Kerry, I do not know why my mom's so stubborn. I told her, you need to do this and you need to do that. And now she is so stubborn. Can you help me? And then I have to give them the bad news that the problem isn't actually your mom, it's you. And you have come in and you have, in trying to help, you have threatened the autonomy of the older person. And so I am guilty of doing it with my mother, and my kids are guilty of doing it with us, with me. And so how do you change that? Because we want to help. So the way that we change that is that we recognize that there are many things that get better as we get older. For example, problem solving. And so you don't hear about that because with all the anti-aging fervor, you don't hear about like things that get better because it doesn't make any money. But I'll tell you, one of the things with problem solving is the integration of the left and right hemisphere of your brain. And so we can come up with solutions that we couldn't come up with when we were younger. And the best way to tell you this is with a story of my colleague who was a professor at Harvard. He was an MD, PhD, Gene Cohen, and he would pick his mom up from the train station. And one day he was late, and she got out there and it's just dumping down snow. She's in her 90s, didn't have her cell phone. She looked around, her son's not there to go to dinner at his house. So she walked over to the train. She walked over to a pizza place and she said, I'd love to have a pizza delivered to my son's house. And when you deliver it, I'd love to ride along in the back of the car with you. And it was such an example of problem solving that as younger people, you don't recognize the incredible problem solving of people who are ahead of you. And because you don't recognize it, you don't allow it. So if we can collectively take a step back and let people who are ahead of us in the journey start with their problem solving and not rush in with a solution and not think that we know better, it's a win-win, because then this like stubborn part really isn't. But it takes patience, it takes humility, it sometimes takes time, but I promise that it is well worth it to let the older person lead, because there's a developmental imperative as we grow older for autonomy and also for legacy. Like, how will I be remembered? So in the same way that our teenagers need to pull away from us developmentally, that's what they're working on. And as we get older, this autonomy and legacy matter. But younger people, having not gotten there yet, don't understand it. And because of that, they don't know to honor it. So
That's an amazing articulate way of putting it and helping us understand it better. And also what you're saying about problem solving, I do a few things cognitively, crossword puzzles I love, and I let myself take a whole week to do the Sunday Times, crossword. And it helps me dig into those parts of my mind that have memory. I do think it helps, but maybe the way to convey to people why it's so important to let the older people solve their problems is it helps us cognitively too, because when we solve these problems, it keeps our brains working. And it does feel bad too when they do that. So, but like you say, you have to change people's attitudes about it.
You do. You have to stop thinking that you know better. So, analogy that I give is that when you're in middle school, you think things are super cool, like, oh, wow, that's so cool, whatever. Your mom, who is older, looks at that and goes like, I know you think that's cool. We don't say anything, but we just let that be. So it's the same thing. So like our, moms or whoever who they got it. They know, and they're not going to correct you a lot of times. They're just going to let you storm in. but but if we recognize that they're ahead of us, they've been like my mom has been 55. But she also has all that comes there in the same way that I have all that before a middle schooler.
That's great, because wisdom is one of the things that societies used to respect and think of as sacred. If you were old enough to have lived that long, you knew a lot, and that's not so important now, or it's not as valued. So that's part of the issue, probably.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're going to change society and the way that we age from the inside out. So we need to each start with our own accepting and loving and honoring our aging self, because I don't believe that a 20-year-old is going to wake up and go, oh, wow, wisdom. I'm going to, so we need to be the ones to lead the way, and to never, take out of our vocabulary anything that puts our older selves down. And instead, like, for example, when somebody comes up to you and goes, oh, I can't believe you're like, you're in your 80s and they can't believe you're out walking the dog. You said, yeah, yes, I am walking the dog. To like help people along so that they can see that their older is going to be better too.
Something you said earlier about the club sandwich generation, and you were saying, there's a health issue with your daughter, that you have a health issue, your mom has a health issue, but it's all normal. Like it's actually, and I feel like it comes back to that mindset, the importance of the mindset that you're talking about, because you could look at that and think everything is falling apart.
Right.
And, or you could think these are normal things that I'm going to walk through. They're challenges, and we're living. This is actually living.
What I have found is that all this anti-aging rhetoric is harming us, because aging is living. So to be anti-aging is to be anti-living. And when we recognize that this is all part of the process, not just the good things, there's a lot of good things, but also the challenging parts to it. And that it's not if we someday die, it's when we someday die. And usually you're not just walking and then you die. Usually before that, even with great health habits, you'll experience a health challenge. So when you experience some kind of health challenge, or the challenge of losing a loved one, or the challenge of your children having conditions, or, I have a lot of friends whose houses just burned down in the Palisades fire. When things happen, when you're living, the choice is up to you on how you walk with those things. And to me, that is aging, that is living. And it's not the avoidance that you're never going to have a health thing, or you're never going to take a fall, or that you're never going to die. That's just silly. But it's how to age, not how not to age.
Dr. Kerry, I have a specific question from our community, and it is just for women who are caring for their parents who do have Alzheimer's or dementia and are finding connection challenging. I know you have done a lot of work in that area. Can you provide some tips or advice to what to do, what not to do when caring for a loved one who has those cognitive issues?
Sure. Well, first of all, I applaud all of you who are caring with loved ones with cognitive impairment. And, dementia is a big umbrella. And under that big umbrella, there are different types. So Alzheimer's disease is the most common, but there is also like Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia, dementia that can come from polypharmacy of taking a lot of different medications, and that can be reversed there's also dementia that we call pseudo dementia that comes from being depressed, and it changes your mind cognitively. So dementia is not a normal part of aging, but it is a common and becomes more common the older that you get. So if you are a person with somebody in your life who's living with cognitive impairment, or if you are living with a diagnosis of dementia or cognitive impairment, the main thing is that we are much more than our brains. And so the most tragic thing that I hear is when somebody will come into my office and their mom is living with Alzheimer's disease, and the adult child will say, talking to me as if their mother isn't right there. And it's even more important to recognize the personhood of people living with cognitive impairment. So you're never think they're not there. They're more there. And the other thing I would really try hard to avoid is, even when you're providing a lot of care, it's never a role reversal. I would encourage you to reframe it in your mind, because too often I hear people say, like, now I'm the parent and she's the child. It's just role reversal. I'm the parent. Your parent is always your parent. And they can require a lot of care, but they're never a child. We never become a child again. And I think that frame is detrimental to the older person, and also ultimately detrimental to you. So a lot of times just thinking of yourself as a care partner, thinking of that there are ways that we can connect that aren't just like this strict cognitive. And I'll give you an example. I work with a mother and a daughter who are absolutely lovely, and the mother is in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's disease. And she really enjoyed hymns from her church. And so what we did is we found those hymns back from her church, and we started playing those because memory is stored in a different part of the brain, especially emotionally salient music. So the daughter was able to play that emotionally salient music, and the mother, who is nonverbal, was able to not only sing the words, but afterwards there was a halo effect because of how the brain had been stimulated, and was able to say the word lovely. And she said lovely, I would say, like 20 or 30 times in a row. And it was so beautiful. And there are ways that we can connect, like with touch, with music, with nature, with just being, with acceptance, that really matter to both parties. And then another part of the caregiving experience is how lonely we can feel, because we feel like, wow, I'm not doing all these things for myself because I am, doing all these for the person that I care for. And so I would just really encourage you to let people in on your journey. So it could be as simple as shooting a girlfriend a text to say, I feel really alone these days because I am just home all day, every day. And like, just to put it out there, how hard it is, because people want to help and they want to connect. But if we keep putting up a front that everything is just fine, I'm fine, it's fine, 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 it doesn't like really open the door for that connection. And when we do that, we go, you too? Wow, you too have that? And I think every time I share a vulnerability, then the other person will be like, oh my gosh, yes, so like put it all out there.
you mentioned that dementia is common, but it's not normal. Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yes. So it's not that, yes, if you live long enough, you will get dementia. No, it is a brain condition. And we can, an amazing amount of research shows us that 40% of the current cases worldwide would be eradicated with lifestyle choices. And so that's great news for movement. That is great news for connection. That's great news for what we eat. And so there's a lot that we can be doing. And there's also, it is not the case, even if you have the APOE4 gene for Alzheimer's disease, it's that it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to live with it. And so I think there's a lot of fear knowing if you have a family history, as I do, of Alzheimer's disease, thinking that that's your destiny. And then you forget where you parked your car and you think, oh no, is that, is it starting? I think to be able to say, no, I am going to picture myself with a sharp mind all the way. I'm going to keep challenging myself and pushing myself, and my mind is going to be sharp. It puts you in a better position than thinking, oh, yes, my mom had it. I'm going to too. It's just a matter of time. So the genetic component is also not nearly as strong as people think it is.
And that statistic, 40% would be eradicated due to lifestyle choices. Like why is this not front page news? You know what I mean?
It's a Lancet article that is really good. And so some time ago, I, basically went over what the elements from this article were because I was so excited about it and my colleagues were also excited about it. And on the one hand, great, and hopefully it helped. But also, I remember in the comments, people like wanted to hold on to their negative beliefs so much. And they would be like, well, easy for you to say, but my mom and my grandma both had it and I'm going to get it. And I just, in the comments, you just want to go, oh my goodness, no, don't put that on yourself. And it's not true. It's, man, we can do a better job with it if we step out of fear. And so, yeah, I was kind of disappointed with with that post because I was like all these comments where I thought, oh, we're not hearing this.
Yes. And so what are some of those key lifestyle changes or choices that people can make to prevent dementia?
So the biggest one is move your body. And so that is, and like for some people, oh gosh, what if you're in a wheelchair? As some of us will end up in wheelchairs. There's still absolutely, like, regardless of what it is, you can find a way to move. And so, moving your arms, moving your legs, and just as you were saying, Amanda, that it is like, taking the stairs, taking a walk. You don't have to get all in a gym outfit and join a gym necessarily. But, if you can incorporate those elements to movement that are one, the strength, if you can do something that is resistant training, and it can be, at home with squats and weights. If you can also do the aerobic part, so we're keeping our heart going, and then also flexibility. When people ask me, why do older people walk like that? I'm like, because just things are tight. And if you aren't proactively stretching them out, they'll get tighter and tighter. And then the last part of the movement is that equilibrium, so that we're doing things like, so brush your teeth standing on one foot each day. I blow dry my hair in a way where I hold one leg up and do the blow drying, like try to incorporate balance things, but be careful not to fall while you're doing those things. So that's a biggie with dementia. Also, what we talked about before is having these connections and having conversations that are meaningful to you, because it stimulates your brain when you're in stimulating conversations. And as Gabriella was saying, with challenging your brain of like, and problem solving is so good. And so thinking about, wow, now this is going to be a little tricky because good. do hard things. Doing hard things is a great way to keep your brain sharp and therefore stave off dementia.
And can you say where it was, what journal it was?
Yeah, so the Lancet is the journal, and yeah, I'll give you the article itself, which I think is always, if people, when you have questions about things, I love that, to go to the source itself,
Yes.
because there is quite a bit of misinformation on social media about things, and I find the people who are the most definitive about things sometimes are the ones who have the least tie to the actual research. And then there's these people who come on and they maybe have 3 followers, but what they're saying is so accurate and research based. So be cautious with social media, and if you can ever get your hands on the article itself, it's helpful, and particularly in this day and age where there's so much misinformation, I think
Absolutely.
we need science.
We always go to the article when we're covering something, and we're like, wait a minute, if this was published in this newspaper this way, and that we read the article, it doesn't really line up. So we're totally on the
Yes.
same page.
That is so true. I find that too. It's amazing to me how it's like a game of telephone. Somebody says something and somebody says something, and before you know it, you're like, wait, that's not what the article said.
Also, I want to point out that I think my father used to, had wide-ranging interests. He was educated, but he was an artist, a commercial artist. He would read the Scientific American magazine, and he said to me, I don't understand most of what's in here, but I don't care. I find it fascinating. And he kind of taught me to, well, go ahead and just challenge yourself. And that's how I feel about these studies. I go to, say, NIH study, and I go, what? But I get the gist of it, and I go, yeah, okay. I just try to understand it from the source. Really good advice.
Good for you. That is so good for us. Yeah, and like to not be afraid of things. Like if you're gonna try to learn a new language, like just go for it. Or you're gonna pick up guitar or whatever we're gonna do, like jump in and go for it, because it is in the going for it that is, that's where the benefit is.
I'd love to ask you our movement living 5. So these are just rapid fire questions and you can answer quickly. The first one is, in a few words, what does wellness mean to you?
Wellness means to me to have a sense that your life is as you have constructed it. So it has to do with like a psychological well-being that isn't necessarily, I think it's going to be different from everyone, right? So it's not an objective like you can you're free of all health problems. I think each person's wellness or well-being, you decide what that means. And so there's number 1.
I love that.
Love it.
What's a daily habit that you swear by to feel your best?
I swear by my gratitude habit. And so I write every day in a journal what I'm grateful for. And I have a running tab, and so does my mom. And my mom has over 600 entries of every day, because what we focus on is what more of happens. So I write it down, but I also, it's the first thing when I wake up. I just, before I really even open my eyes, think through all the things like, oh, I'm breathing. I can see. I have the soft pillow. I can laugh. There's just, it's endless number of things that we can be grateful for if we decide to be.
Love that. Do you have a health concern that you are personally most concerned about?
I do. This is my arm that has skin cancer, and I've had quite a few of them. And I just lost my father-in-law to skin cancer. And so those of us who are lucky enough to be in the sun so much, you just need to be so proactive about it. And it isn't only melanoma that's the problem, that we also need to keep up with squamous cell and basal cell. And so for my health, I think that it is my job is to be the dermatologist's best friend and get things off as I discover them.
Do you have a favorite way to treat yourself?
Yes. My favorite way to treat myself is to immerse myself in nature. So I think that nature is this free health spa, and that we, with a little effort, we can all access it. And so it's different. Some people, it's the mountains. Some people, it's like a little garden. Some people need to drive a ways to get there. And I'm close to the beach, so I try to sit down on that sand. And I think that my favorite treat is nature. And sometimes it's so obvious and so free that we forget to do it. So I'll go whole days where I don't even do that, and it takes its toll when you don't.
So good. What is something that you are learning right now?
I am learning to be more deliberate. Doing one thing at a time is what I'm working on, because what I have found is these days I'm a little busier, and because of that, I erroneously think that I can multitask. But when you multitask, it raises your cortisol because you're not doing either very well and you know it. And so it causes stress in there. And so I'm trying to just say you can only do one thing at a time, and you're not going to get through this ridiculous list of 30 things that you created for yourself, and just do one. And I'm speaking more out of weakness than out of strength.
You know, I just took a deep breath when you said that, and I went, oh yeah, I feel better already.
Yeah, one thing at a time, and that we're enough. We're enough. Society tells us we need to be more and better and different and whatever. And so we have to consciously say, I'm doing great. I can only do one thing at a time. I only want to do one thing at a time. And I am enough. I'm good. I'm good right here as I am. I don't need to, it's not out there. It's like, we're here.
Great advice. What a great way
So
to.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Dr. Kerry, it has been
Great.
so wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your insights, the work that you're doing, the book that you're releasing. We're all going to pre-order it now.
Well, right back at you. Thank you so much to have you two doing the work every day as mother and daughter, and like walking it and sharing it with people. I mean, you talk about practicing Joyspan. You are already there, and you are enabling others to do that as well. And I am really grateful. And I love that I get the newsletter that you put out, and I love following you on social media. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kerry.
Thank you.
you.
Okay, have a great one.
Okay.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.